Hello friends, I welcome you all to another edition of Daily News Analysis. So in this particular edition, we are going to discuss some very important articles. The first article that we are going to discuss is about fiscal health of states under strain. The public debt has almost tripled in the last 10 years. This particular report is highlighted through CAG. So important analysis again from Indian Express newspaper from the perspective of GS2, GS3 economy as well. Another important article is about US, UK, France put on hold Pak bid to designate Baloch group as terrorists at UN. Important analysis again from the perspective of GS2 international relations. So stay tuned. Third important article that we are going to take a look at is US revoking sanctions waiver for Chabahar port. Important analysis again from the perspective of GS2 international relations. Apart from that, places in news again vital. Another important article is about production of rare earth magnets, a race outside China. So important analysis again from the perspective of GS3 economy. Apart from that, to certain extent important from the perspective of prelims as well. In decoded section, that is important from the perspective of mains particularly, we are going to take a look at PIB article titled India's Manufacturing Momentum, Performance and Policy. So to what extent India's manufacturing policy has shaped in the last 10 years, what sort of transformation we have seen in this particular regard. Important analysis again from the perspective of GS3 economy. So stay tuned for that particular article as well. So the first article is about fiscal health of states under strain as public debt triples in last 10 years. This is the CAG report which has analyzed the data from 2013-14 to 2022-23. So important analysis, it is first such report on the state's fiscal health. So important analysis, as I said earlier, from the perspective of GS2 as well as GS3, CAG related updates are always important. So fiscal health of state under strain as public debt triples in last 10 years from 2013-14 to 22-23. The public debt of all 28 states combined tripled in last 10 years from say rupees 17.57 lakh crore in 2013-14 to 59.60 lakh crore in 22-23. So it is almost a triple jump according to first of its kind report by the Comptroller and Auditor General of India that provides a decadal analysis on fiscal health of states. There is always a question mark when it comes to fiscal health of states. So, and that has been confirmed through this particular first of its kind report through CAG as well. The report was released Friday by CAG, K. Sanjay Murthy. So remember the name of the CAG as well. The current CAG, Comptroller and Auditor General of India, is K. Sanjay Murthy. In many state PCS, such facts are always asked during the State Finance Secretary's conference. So this particular report has been released recently during that particular conference. So what are some of the observations from the recently released CAG report? So first and foremost, there is an overview of states' public debt by the fiscal year 22-23. So according to the report, the total public debt, essentially internal debt and loans and advances from the center of the 28 Indian states stood at rupees 59 lakh crore, as I earlier said, by the end of the FY 22-23, which is almost 22.96% of their gross state domestic product. Compared to say FY 2013-14, when the total public debt of these combined states was rupees 17 lakh crore, at that point of time it was 16.66% of the GSDP. The debt has increased 3.39 times, almost tripled, and the debt to GSDP ratio has risen to almost 23% now. Essentially, this is a huge jump when say compared to 2013-14 time. So some of the states which have been highlighted in this particular report is also important to know here. State-wise debt to GSDP ratio. So highest ratio in this regard is of Punjab with 40.35%. Next comes Nagaland with 37.15%, West Bengal with 33.70%. So you can clearly see the high debt to GSDP ratio for these particular states. Lowest, when it comes to lowest debt to GSDP ratios, Odisha comes first at 8.45%. After that, industrially developed state like Maharashtra comes at second place with 14.64%. and then there is Gujarat with 16.37%. So these states to a certain extent have managed their public debt within certain limits. As of March 31, 2023, 8 states had public debt over 30% of their GSDP, huge. 6 states had public debt below 20% of GSDP. 14 states had public debt between 20 to 30% of their GSDP. Important data, remember some of these data points. And another important thing to know here is why Punjab has this high debt to GSDP ratio. Just comment in the comment section what are particular reasons when it comes to Punjab. Third important point highlighted in that particular article or rather report of CAG is comparison with national GDP. So when it comes to national GDP, the combined states GDP of 59 lakh crore was 22.17% of India's total GDP for FY 22-23, which stood at, you can clearly see the figure for overall national GDP here. No need to remember these exact figures, but percentages are important here. So the source of public debt in this regard are also important to know. The public debt of states include open market borrowings via securities, treasury bills or even bonds, loans from banks, for example, SBI in that regard, ways and means advances from the RBI, loans from financial institutions such as LIC and NABARD as well. So you can clearly see there are limited avenues when it comes to borrowing for the state governments. So what exactly is the issue when it comes to borrowing from the outside? Whether it is allowed in India for states to borrow from the outside agencies or not? Interesting question. So no, it is not allowed for the states to borrow directly from, say, the outside international agencies like World Bank, IMF, but definitely, there can be assistance diverted through center. So there is need to be, the permission in that regard from the center when it comes to borrowing from the international agencies for the state governments. So the fifth important article or point highlighted in that particular CAG report is debt as a percentage of revenue and non-debt receipts. So debt was between 128 to 191% of revenue receipts, FY 2014-15 to FY 22-2021. As a percentage of total non-debt receipts, debt ranged from 127% to 190%. So these are, very important figures here. Just remember those figures. On average, public debt was 150% of revenue or non-debt receipts and 20% of GSDP, ranging between 17 to 25%. Notably, during FY 2021, debt to GSDP jumped from 21 to 25%. What is the reason? That is COVID pandemic. So COVID related decline in GSDP actually, jumped or rather shot that particular debt to GSDP ratio for that 1 year time period of FY 2020 to 21. So in that time period, the GSDP ratio on average jumped from 21% to 25%. So another important point highlighted is increased borrowing from the union government. Between 2020-21 and 22-23, states borrowed more from the union government mainly due to back-to-back loans in lieu of GST compensation shortfall. Another is special assistance loans for capital expenditure in that regard. So we can see, clearly see the union government being the major borrowing entity for the states. Violation of golden rule of borrowing. So what is this golden rule of borrowing we are talking here? The report cites that the golden rule of borrowing, that governments should borrow for capital investment, not current spending, was not followed by 11 states which used borrowed funds to revenue expenditure. So what is this, golden rule of borrowing? So if you want to borrow it for, say, capital investment, not for current spending. Current spending essentially revenue expenditure. But this particular, golden rule has been violated by 11 states, and those states have been highlighted in this particular first of its CAG report. So as I earlier said, those data about, the debt ratios or when it comes to revenue receipts, you can clearly see many of these states have borrowed, the money or rather funds to actually fund their revenue expenditure. So, current expenditure, not capital investments. So, what are some of the states highlighted? First and foremost, there is Andhra, there is Assam, Bihar, Haryana, Himachal Pradesh, Kerala, Mizoram, Punjab, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu and West Bengal. So, these are some of the states highlighted by the CAG report that says that golden rule of borrowing has not been followed by these particular states. So, what is that golden rule of borrowing? Again, I am telling you that the government should borrow for capital investment, not current expenditure, not for revenue expenditures. So, in these states, capital expenditure was less than net public debt receipts, implying that part of the borrowing was due to meet revenue deficits as well. Specific cases have been highlighted in the report. For example, Andhra Pradesh, capital expenditure only 17% of net borrowings. Punjab only 26%. Haryana and Himachal Pradesh at about 50%. So, these are some of the specific cases highlighted in that particular CAG report. So, when it comes to public debt, the most important act in this regard is FRBM Act. FRBM, the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act of 2003. It is a key legislative framework in India aimed at ensuring fiscal discipline, reducing public debt and maintaining macroeconomic stability. So, these are some of the 3 to 4 objectives when it comes to FRBM Act. It applies to both central government and indirectly to state governments as well. So, there are public debt requirements when it comes to this particular act. The act was designed to control fiscal deficit and revenue deficit, reduce the overall debt burden, very true, ensure intergenerational equity in fiscal management, improve transparency and accountability in fiscal operations as well. Debt related targets under FRBM. So, as the article talks about the public debt to GSDP ratios, let's look at some of the provisions when it comes to public debt under FRBM. For the central government, under the original FRBM framework and subsequent amendments, fiscal deficit target to be limited to say 3% of GDP. By the way, there is only one time that center able to attain this particular target. Can you tell me in which particular year center is able to get to this particular target under FRBM? Very important from the perspective of prelims here. Revenue deficit to be eliminated over time. Central government debt as per amended targets under the 2018 FRBM amendment to reduce the central government debt to 40% of GDP by FY 24-25. These targets were relaxed during COVID-19 due to extraordinary fiscal situations at that point of time. We all know that. For state governments, though the FRBM Act is for the center, all states enacted their own state FRBM Acts as well in line with central recommendations, which generally includes fiscal deficit ceiling up to 3% of GSDP. So, forget about this 3% of GSDP. On average, it is almost at 23% now. State debt sustainability is another target. Borrowing limits, states must get central approval for borrowing under Article 293 of the Constitution. The 15th Finance Commission provided further flexibility in that regard. States can borrow up to 0.5% of their GSDP, that is up to 3.5%, subject to reforms in power, urban finance, etc. So, 15th Finance Commission added 0.5% of GSDP leverage with states so that they can say do reforms in power and urban finance sector. To what extent that particular provision has been implemented by states is again questionable. So, there is very famous NK Singh committee of 2017, that is FRBM review committee. Some of its suggestions we can see here: replace fiscal deficit target with debt anchor, introduce new debt to GDP ceiling of 60%, 40% for center plus 20% for the states. That is what NK Singh recommended. Establish fiscal council to ensure independent oversight like GST council. Allow some flexibility, that is escape clause, during exceptional circumstances like war, natural disaster or structural reforms. So, this particular point here is very important, because time to time the center has amended FRBM Act so many times. That is why it is often considered this particular recommendation given by NK Singh as a solution, that there will be, there should be escape clause during exceptional circumstances. FRBM and debt sustainability. The FRBM Act promotes debt sustainability by limiting excessive borrowings, very true, requiring medium-term fiscal policy statements, ensuring governments use borrowing primarily for productive capital expenditure. So, as I earlier said, there is a golden rule for borrowing when it comes to states or central government. However, effective implementation also depend on adherence to borrowing limits, transparent fiscal reporting and spending. Strengthening oversight mechanisms in that regard are also very important. So, what is debt to GDP ratio? It is pretty much self-explanatory. Debt to GDP ratio, total debt of the country divided by total GDP of the country. That is debt to GDP ratio. The debt to GDP ratio is a country's total government debt divided by its gross domestic product, that is GDP, expressed as a percentage. It measures nation's ability to repay its accumulated debt with higher ratio, indicating greater debt burden relative to its economic output. Indian public debt in this regard. India's, what exactly is the situation when it comes to India's public debt? See, the data in that regard varies because many times there are monthly data released. So, it may change, but on average India's public debt is primarily internal. Almost 96 to 97% of the total debt of India is internal. So, this is the data, by the way, for 25-26 and consists of marketable and non-marketable components. Marketable debt includes government dated securities, treasury bills, while non-marketed includes international financial institutions support. The overall public debt also includes external debt from, say, foreign sources, with loans being the largest component of external debt. Anyway, India's debt is majorly composed of its internal debt. India's total public debt is an estimated 196.79 lakh crore, approximately $2.36 trillion as of March 26, with internal debt making up majority of the liabilities. The debt to GDP ratio is a key indicator, projected to be around 80% by the end of 2025. So, reflecting ongoing government borrowing. So, overall the debt to GDP ratio when it comes to India, it will be 80% by the end of year 25. The NK Singh committee's target is 60%. That too, 40% for center plus 20% for states. We are going to see at which time we are going to achieve that particular target. But can you tell me which country has the highest debt to GSDP ratio? And what is the situation when it comes to, say, US? There is always, debt ceiling limit, and the conversation around that particular point in US politics is very, very important. Again, US case is very different. So, just go through, debt ratio for the US as well, and let me know which country has the highest state to GDP, debt to GDP ratio in the comment section. So, another, important article highlighted in the Indian Express is CAG and use of AI. So, AI based audit detected fraudulent cases in states beneficiary scheme, says CAG. See, many times you can utilize such statements of CAG effectively in your answers, particularly in GS2 mains, you will get question on CAG. So, you must mention some of the important reports that are released by CAG. At the same time, to what extent CAG itself, has utilized, latest technologies like machine learning or AI in its working. So, AI/ML uncovers large scale fraud in beneficiary scheme. Digitization and remote auditing as top priorities of the current CAG. CAG emphasized that digitization of the audit process is the current top priority. This includes enabling remote audits, reducing administrative hassles, and ensuring timeliness and increasing audit coverage, such as achieving 100% database audits in GST and IT systems. Nationwide rollout of remote audits is also considered. Strengthening digital public finance infrastructure. The current CAG highlighted the adoption of key IT systems like MIS, particularly Information Financial Management Information System, MIS system, e-voucher system and digital land records, etc., which enhances transparency and governance. Obviously, e-governance is at the focus for the good governance. Overall, Expenditure Secretary added that initiatives like SNA Sparsh and Special Assistance for Capital Investment will support states in building robust digital financial management frameworks as well. So, SNA Sparsh, remember that it is just one example of digitization of the financial systems when it comes to states. So, this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Another important article that we are going to discuss is about US, UK, France putting on hold Pakistan's bid to designate Baloch group as terrorist. So, this particular news again important from the perspective of GS2 international relations. So, in this particular news, what has happened is the US, France and UK have teamed up to put a technical hold on Pakistan's bid to list Balochistan Liberation Army, that is BLA, and its allies, that is Majid Brigade, as a terrorist group at the UN Security Council's 1267 Sanctions Committee. Remember this particular committee's name here, and its purpose again is important from the perspective of prelims. Pakistan, a non-permanent member of the UNSC, very true, had China, a permanent member, backing the proposal, but three other non-permanent members of the Security Council said that BLA does not have links with Al-Qaeda or ISIL, that is ISIS essentially. So, this particular 1267 Sanctions Committee focuses on Al-Qaeda and ISIL, remember that, and that is why these permanent members other than China demanded more data. On September 17, permanent representative of Pakistan to the UN had told a meeting of the Security Council verbatim that Pakistan and China have jointly submitted to the 1267 Sanctions Committee a request to designate BLA, that is Baloch Liberation Army, and Majid Brigade. We hope the Council will act swiftly on this particular listing to curb their terrorist activities. Unless Islamabad is able to furnish more information that links BLA and Majid Brigade to the two terror groups, the UNSC's 1267 Sanctions Committee, it deals with terror groups with links to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, won't be able to list it. Pakistan and China have been told. They have been told directly, until and unless you connect the activities of the BLA or Majid Brigade to Al-Qaeda or ISIS, they will not budge from their technical hold. Baloch militancy and terror listing, by the way, is again important point to know here. US has designated BLA and Majid Brigade as terrorist organization. In recent times, we have seen, Trump administration in particular designating BLA and Majid Brigade as a foreign terrorist organizations, FTOs. The BLA was previously labeled as specially designated global terrorist in 2019. Since then, it has claimed responsibility for several attacks, including the 2024 suicide bombings in Karachi and Gwadar and the Jafar Express hijacking, which resulted in 31 deaths in recent times as well. Pakistan's push for UN designation and international response in that regard. Following the US designation, Pakistan hoped to secure a UN Security Council backing for its designation of the BLA as a terrorist group. However, the US along with France and UK now has reportedly placed a technical hold on the process, typically delaying the action for about 6 months. This move mirrors the US earlier designation of the Resistance Front, TRF, an LET-linked group after the Pahalgam attack, which also appeared in UNSC sanctions report as well. So, India's cautious watch amid accusations. Obviously, Pakistan has these accusations, and Pakistan accused India of supporting the BLA, allegations that New Delhi always has consistently denied. The geopolitical implication of the BLA's international terrorist designation may affect regional narratives and diplomatic exchanges going forward. So, there is very famous Baloch liberation movement generally, which the Pakistan army or even the Pakistan government tries to suppress. UNSC's 1267 Sanctions Committee. So, what exactly is this Sanctions Committee? Another important committee of the United Nations Security Council. The UNSC's 1267 Sanctions Committee, also known as Al-Qaeda ISIL Sanctions Committee, is a powerful body established to oversee measures against individuals, groups, undertakings and entities associated with terrorism, especially Al-Qaeda, ISIS and their affiliates. So, this is the primary purpose of 1267 Sanctions Committee. So, what exactly is this 1267 in it? So, obviously, it was established way back in 1999 through Resolution 1267, hence the name. Main objective is to combat global terrorism emanating from, say, Al Qaeda or ISIS. Scope expanded over time and mandate widened to include associated individuals and groups, not just core Al Qaeda or ISIS. So, key functions in that regard: asset freezing, travel ban, and arms embargo. So, essentially, UN itself, this particular committee recommends or puts sanctions on the individuals, which will lead to asset freeze or travel ban or arms embargo in certain cases. Listing process is also interesting. Who can propose? Any UN Security Council member can propose an individual or entity for listing. Then there is a review and approval. The 15-member committee operates by consensus. If any one member, including P5 countries like US, UK, China, Russia, France, places a technical hold or objects, the listing is delayed or blocked. Decision timeline: usually the committee has 10 working days to review a listing proposal. A technical hold can delay the process by up to 6 months, expandable by 3 months after that. There is, delisting process as well. Individuals or entities can request to be removed or delisted via the focal point for delisting for non-state actors, the member state that proposed the listing as well. The ombudsperson mechanism for ISIL or Al Qaeda sanctions allows fair review of delisting process as well. India's interest in that regard is very important. India has frequently used 1267 mechanism to punish the Pakistani-based terrorist organizations or groups. Masood Azhar, Jaish-e-Mohammed, listed as a terrorist organization in 2019. Sajid Mir, Abdul Rauf Asghar and Hafiz Saeed, etc. India is actually lobbying to list these individuals under 1267 sanctions committee, but the proposals have often been blocked by China through, again, technical holds, causing diplomatic tensions with China in that regard. So, let's look at some of the Baloch, some of the history when it comes to Baloch militancy. So, Baloch militancy is the armed separatist movement in the Balochistan region of Pakistan, where militant groups are demanding greater autonomy or complete independence for Balochistan, Pakistan's largest but least developed province. The movement is rooted in perceived economic exploitation, political marginalization, cultural suppression, military crackdowns by the Pakistani state. So, Pakistani politics in particular is dominated by the Punjab province, although the Balochistan, province is one of the largest province with rich mineral resources, yet still least developed province of the Pakistan. You can clearly see the Balochistan, the area occupied by Balochistan. Very important port is Gwadar port in that regard. There is, another important area of Iran that you can clearly see here, that is Sistan and Balochistan. So, there is Sistan and Balochistan region in Iran as well. So, there are some cultural links between these two regions. We are not going to go into those cultural links here. So, but this particular, Balochistan region is very strategically located. Balochistan borders Iran, Afghanistan and Arabian Sea, very important. Acts as a gateway of trade routes linking South Asia, Central Asia and the Middle East. Very important. As you know, we all know that China is developing that Gwadar port under its CPSE project. A deep sea port developed with Chinese investment under CPSE, that is BRI, is considered a vital node in China's BRI initiative, as I said. The region is very resource rich, home to Sui gas fields. Remember these, places in news, a major source of Pakistan's energy. So, Sui gas fields, part of Balochistan, Pakistan. Also has significant copper and gold deposits. For example, Reko Dik mine. So, these are, important mines in that particular area. Conflicts and insurgency. Balochistan has witnessed armed uprisings since 1948. What are their demands? Obviously, the greater autonomy, control over local resources, political rights and in some cases full independence from, say, the Pakistan. Key militant groups are obviously there is a Baloch Liberation Army, then there is Baloch Liberation Front as well, there is Baloch Republican Army as well, and then there is, Majid Brigade. The Pakistani military and intelligence agencies have been accused of human rights abuses, including enforced disappearances, torture and extrajudicial killings when it comes to Balochistan. So, that is why, there is this clamor for the independence for the Balochistan. Development versus discontent. Projects like CPEC and Gwadar Port aim to develop the region but are criticized for excluding locals from the benefits. Many times under the CPEC projects, what are the workers involved? Who are the workers involved are essentially Chinese. So it is leading to some sort of discontent in the people of the region because they are essentially excluding the locals from the benefits of these projects. Heavy Chinese presence, security militarization, and that is leading to, say, human rights violations. The local population is feeling marginalized as much as the wealth generated is perceived to benefit the Punjab province and the federal government, not Balochistan itself. So, as I said, the politics and economy has been dominated to a certain extent by the Punjab when it comes to Pakistan. So, this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. The committee, the UNSC 1267 Sanctions Committee, again very, very important. Another important article that we are going to discuss is about US revoking Chabahar sanctions waiver, checking its impact on India, says MEA. So, in recent times, the US administration has withdrawn its sanctions waiver for Iran's Chabahar port, effective September 29, is promoting India to assess the impact of this moving, particular move. So, about the news, the US administration has withdrawn the sanctions waiver for Iran's Chabahar port, with sanctions set to take effect from, say, September 29. While primarily targeting Iran, this move is expected to negatively impact India, which has been developing the port as a key gateway to Afghanistan and to Central Asia further. Why? Because, obviously there is a Pakistan in between and there is no direct land route connectivity between, say, India and Afghanistan. Although technically we have the land border with Afghanistan. You can clearly see in that map, but that has been, that region has been occupied by Pakistan. India's Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson stated that the government is studying the implications of the waiver's revocation to assess its impact on Indian interests. The decision aligns with US maximum pressure policy under the President Trump, which aimed at isolating Iran. Located in Sistan Balochistan province, Chabahar is the closest Iranian port to India and supports secure maritime access for large cargo ships. In May 2016, India, Iran, Afghanistan signed Chabahar Agreement to build an international transport and transit corridor. India is actively involved in ports development, particularly Shahid Beheshti Terminal, that is phase 1. As part of its investment, India has already supplied 6 mobile harbor cranes and other equipment valued at $25 million. So, India is investing in this particular, terminals development titled Shahid Beheshti Terminal phase 1. And, as I said earlier, India has investment in that particular Chabahar port. Chabahar, which sits at the mouth of Gulf of Oman, is Iran's first deep water port that puts the country on the global oceanic trade route map. You can clearly see the location, the strategic location of the Chabahar port. You can clearly see the Gwadar port's location, which is being developed under CPEC by China. And, the Chabahar port, if we get the access to the port, India will be able to, say, bypass the Pakistani, Pakistani blockade in that regard, and through that we can, say, connect to Afghanistan and then further to Central Asia. The port lies to the west of Iran's border with Pakistan, about as far as Gwadar, a competing port developed by China in Pakistan, that lies to the east of the border. So, you can clearly see the strategic location of that particular port, Chabahar port, and you can, clearly see the route that has been developed in that regard. The land route with Zahedan or Zaranj, and then there is Kabul. It further connects to Kabul. So, that land route and land plus railway route. Chabahar is of strategic importance to both Iran and India. That is very true. It can potentially help Tehran ward off effect of, say, Western sanctions and offers New Delhi an alternative route that bypasses Pakistan, as I said. The port is also part of the proposed INSTC. INSTC, International North-South Transport Corridor. It is a multimodal transportation project linking the Indian Ocean and Persian Gulf to Caspian Sea via Iran and onward to Northern Europe via St. Petersburg in Russia. So, this particular point is important. UPSC has already asked prelims question on INSTC in 25 itself. So, just go through that particular, UPSC PYQ. Very interesting, but very controversial at the same time. So, what exactly is this INSTC? The International North-South Transport Corridor is a multimodal trade route, that is sea, rail or road, that connects India, Iran, Russia and Europe, aimed at reducing transit time and cost of cargo movement between South Asia and Europe. It will directly connect South Asia to Europe. What are some of the major routes? First and foremost, there is Mumbai, which will then connect to Chabahar or Bandar Abbas in Iran. Then it will connect to Caspian Sea via ports like say Bandar Anzail. Then it will further connect to Russia via Azerbaijan, Baku and further to the north. And then it will connect to Europe via Moscow, St. Petersburg onward through rail networks. So, you can clearly see, the route, being developed in that regard. Optional extensions are also available. For example, there is route to Afghanistan or Central Asia or larger Caucasus region. You can clearly see, INSTC route and the standard route that Indian exports to the Europe generally takes. So, it will reduce the travel time, at the same time cost as well, and further it will boost say South Asia's overall trade with Europe. We are going to see whether we will be able to complete that particular project or not, given the Russia-Ukraine war or even Israel-Hamas war. So, in these such geopolitically fragile conditions, the development of that particular trade route is in question. Nature of India's involvement in Chabahar port. So, let us look at some of the nature of the involvement. India's engagement with Chabahar port project began way back in 2002, when Iran's then National Security Advisor met India's NSA at that point of time. This led to deeper cooperation during Iranian president's visit in 2003, and he and at that point of time, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee signed a strategic roadmap that included development of Chabahar as a key project. So, the Chabahar is on India's map for development since long. After partition, India lost direct land access to Iran and Central Asia via Pakistan, but this didn't impact its economy significantly until the 90s, when liberalization increased India's global trade aspirations. With more open economy, trade routes became central to India's geopolitical strategy. India and Iran's cooperation strengthened the Taliban seized power in Afghanistan in 1996, as both countries supported the Northern Alliance against the Pakistan-based groups. So, this is some of the history. Just go through history part. This common interest and the Pakistani bloc on land transit pushed India to explore alternate routes to Afghanistan and beyond. Chabahar offered the most viable option in that regard. So, as I said, it gives India the option to say the BRI project as well, and it will further develop INSTC. So, it is part of that, it is very strategic part of that particular trade project. Status of the Chabahar port. So, what exactly is the current status? India's investment in Chabahar port project is focused exclusively on Shahid Beheshti terminal, one of the two ports in Chabahar complex, the other being Shahid Kalantari. Remember these names, places in news. Following the India-Iran-Afghanistan trilateral agreement in 2016, India rapidly developed phase 1 of the port, which was inaugurated in December 2017. India sent its first shipment of wheat to Afghanistan in the same year, and by 2019, Afghan exports to India had started flowing through the port. So, it gave immense result at that point of time. To oversee overseas port development, India established India Ports Global Limited in 2015, which took over partial operations of Shahid Beheshti port in 2018. The port is planned to be developed in 4 phases, eventually reaching a capacity of almost 82 million tons annually with 32 jetties. As of 2019, the port's capacity stood at almost 6 million tons. Despite its strategic significance, India's development has faced significant delays, ports development in particular, largely due to India's slow infrastructure execution in neighboring countries, and more critically, geopolitical roadblocks. For example, US-Iran tensions. After the 2003 India-Iran strategic agreement, India slowed engagement with Iran under US pressure as well. We have seen that under the earlier Trump administration, and even now also, the situation worsened after the US withdrawal from Afghanistan and the return of Taliban in 2021, which disrupted India's regional plans. However, India has since reopened its embassy in Kabul, and renewed its development commitments, including allocating almost 100 crore for Chabahar and pledging 20,000 metric tons of wheat aid via port in 2023. So, what will be the impact of, say, the withdrawal of sanctions waiver now on India? Obviously, the backdrop of it is US strikes on Iran nuclear facilities in recent times. The decision follows a significant escalation. US airstrikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites on June 22, which aimed at destroying parts of Iran's nuclear infrastructure. The move is part of a renewed maximum pressure policy reminiscent of the Trump administration's approach to Iran. So, impact on India's strategic interest. While the move targets Iran, it directly affects India as Chabahar port is a key component of India's strategy to access Afghanistan and Central Asia bypassing Pakistan. Indian sources have described the revocation as a major setback to its regional connectivity and trade ambitions, especially with Chabahar's proximity to China-backed Gwadar port. So, in mapping corner, let's look at Iran now. So, Iran, you may get, by the way, question in prelims, what are the border countries of Iran? So, just remember some of the border countries, or rather all the border countries of Iran. See, map is all about visualization. You cannot particularly, rote learn all these names. Iran shares land border with Armenia, Azerbaijan. You can clearly see these two countries. There is Turkmenistan, then there is Afghanistan, Pakistan. You can clearly see here, Sistan, Balochistan and Balochistan province, very culturally similar. Then there is a Turkey, then there is Iraq, and that's it. To the south of Iran, we have Persian Gulf, obviously, and then to the north, we have Caspian Sea as well. Then, there is Gulf of Oman as well. You can clearly see the Gulf of Oman part. Okay. So, this is a physical map of Iran. You can see some of the mountain ranges, very interesting. There is Zagros Mountains, Elburz Mountains, and other such physical features. So, Lake Urmia, you can see, very famous lake in Iran particularly. So, remember some of these, names of mountains and lakes from Iran as well. You may get a question in prelims in that regard. So, this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer. Again, this is also an interesting question based on mapping. Just comment your answer in the comment section. Another important article is about production of rare earth magnets outside China. With China exerting its power, race to make rare earth magnets elsewhere has begun. So, nearly 6 months ago, China suspended exports of rare earth magnets, critical component used in industries ranging from automotive to defense. This move spotlighted Chinese dominance over these essential materials and prompted urgent global efforts, especially in United States and Europe, to establish alternative resources. As a result, 4 rare earth magnet factories in the US have been recently opened, and large facility has recently been opened in Eastern Europe as well. Despite these steps, the world still lags behind China, which benefits from 3 decades of investment in this particular sector. China has used its monopoly on rare earth magnets to take or to exert geopolitical, geostrategic pressure rather, including during trade negotiations with Trump administration in recent times and the European Union. It recently restricted exports to Europe to counter potential US tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, resulting in supply shortages and production halts, particularly affecting automakers and defense contractors. So, China has used its leverage when it comes to rare earth magnets. That is sort of prompting other states to invest heavily on the production of rare earth magnets now. Concerns over Chinese control on rare earths have existed for years in US and EU, prompting government supported projects now nearing completion. But despite that, you can clearly see North America and Europe import about 40,000 tons of rare earth magnets annually, almost entirely from China. So, that sort of Chinese dominance we can see on rare earth magnets. In comparison, they produce less than 2,000 tons domestically, mainly in Germany and Finland. So, rare earth magnets, when it comes to indigenous production, say in North Europe or North America or Europe, largely it is limited to say 2,000 tons, although they almost import 40,000 tons from China. In contrast, China produces over 2 lakh tons of rare earth magnets every year and has the capability to manufacture dozens of magnet types tailored for various purposes. A single gasoline or car may contain over 40 rare earth magnets in systems like seats, brake and mirrors. So you can clearly see the importance, or rather the emerging importance of rare earth magnets. One of the main reasons for China's dominance is its near total control over the refining of the rare earths ores. Over 99% of heat resistant rare earths are processed in Chinese refineries. So you can clearly see the dominance of China when it comes to refining the rare earths. Almost 99% of heat resistance rare earths have been refined in Chinese factories. Even countries like US export their mined over to China for refining, further reinforcing Chinese strategic leverage. So what exactly are these rare earth magnets? Rare earth elements we all know. Rare earth magnets are type of strong permanent magnets made from obviously rare earth elements, especially from lanthanide group of the periodic table. These magnets are essential to many modern technologies, as I earlier said, and are significantly stronger than say traditional magnets like ferrite or alnico. There are two types of rare earth magnets. Remember these types. There is first and foremost neodymium iron boron magnets, strongest type of rare earth magnet commonly used in electric motors, hard drives, wind turbines, headphones and MRI machines. Another important type is samarium cobalt magnets, slightly less strong than say neodymium iron boron magnets, but more resistant to corrosion and high temperatures. Generally, they are used in aerospace, military and high temperature environments because they are resistant to corrosion and high temperatures. So remember these two magnet types of when it comes to rare earth magnets. Key applications we have all seen, and Chinese dominance I already told you. Just go through these particular slides here. And this is very important practice question for you. Just comment your answer in the comment section. So in the decoded section, which is generally important for the mains purpose, we are going to take a look at the PIB article, which has been recently released. India's manufacturing momentum, performance and policy. So, reforms, resilience and roadmap to global manufacturing leadership with index of industrial production surging to 3.5% year on year in recent times. So, it generally shows the strong manufacturing growth in recent times. Particularly index of industrial production has jumped. We have all seen flagship schemes like PLI, PM Mitra, there is National Manufacturing Mission and Skill India are accelerating capacity building and strengthening India's manufacturing ecosystem. India's manufacturing export engine remained strong with merchandise exports rising 2.52% year on year to US 185, almost US 185 billion dollars in April-August 2025. So you can clearly see measuring the momentum IIP and manufacturing growth. So manufacturing growth has jumped in recent times from say to 5.40%, particularly manufacturing growth you can clearly see here. So India's manufacturing sector is emerging as a key driver of its economic growth, with factories forming the core of its evolving growth model. The IIP in particular has shown significant jump. So what is fueling the IIP surge? You can clearly see that within the manufacturing sector, out of 23 industry groups, 14 recorded year on year growth in July 2025. Leading performers include basic metals, electrical equipment in particular, other non-metallic mineral products as well. So these particular subcomponents has seen the jump that has been totally reflected in IIP surge as well. The industrial surge is supported by policies like PLI, National Manufacturing Mission, which are transforming regions like Pune or Chennai into modern manufacturing hubs. India's positioning in global supply chains is strengthening as a supply chain shift and consumer base grows. Supporting this momentum is obviously PMI index as well, which also showed impressive growth of 59.3 in August 2025, the highest in over 17 months, or rather 17 years, signaling a robust improvement in operating conditions as well. The government envisions a long-term industrial transformation with goal of making India global manufacturing leader by 2047 as part of its Amrit Kal. So that's our goal. When India becomes a developed country by 2047, it will also emerge as a global manufacturing superpower. rising IIP and PMI figures suggest that India is firmly laying the foundation for sustained economic growth with manufacturing at its heart. Obviously, why there is always focus on the manufacturing, because it is, labor intensive sector, engine of growth, sectors on the move, which are some of the sectors, which have been highlighted that are part of, say, this transformation. First and foremost, there is electronics. So, India's factory floor goes digital. India's electronics manufacturing sector has seen 6-fold rise in production and an 8-fold surge in exports over the past 11 years. So, in last 10 decades, we have seen this transformation when it comes to electronics. Electronics value addition has jumped from 30 to 70% with targets to reach almost 90% by FY27. We are going to reach that particular target as well. India has attracted more than $4 billion FDI inflow in the field of electronic manufacturing since FY 2020-21, and nearly 70% of this FDI is contributed by the beneficiaries of the PLI scheme. So, PLI scheme in particular, is the anchor around which this manufacturing boom is getting revolved. We have all seen the miracle of, say, mobile manufacturing recent times when it comes to electronics as well. There is, pharma, the pharmacy of the world. India is indeed a pharmacy of the world. India's pharmaceutical industry is a global powerhouse, ranking 3rd in the world by volume, 14th in terms of value of production, supplying over 50% of global vaccine demand and nearly 40% of generics to the US. So, remember these data points. Again, very important, you must utilize such data effectively in your GS3 related answers. The industry is projected to grow $130 billion by 2030 and USD $450 billion market by 2047. So, it will show tremendous growth in upcoming times. Another important manufacturing sector is automobile, shifting into high gear. India's automotive industry is cornerstone of nation's manufacturing and economic growth, contributing 7.1% to India's GDP and 49% to manufacturing GDP as per Niti Aayog. During FY25, the total production of passenger vehicles, commercial vehicles, 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers and quadricycles was over 3.10 crore units. So, as the 4th largest automobile producer globally, India possesses the scale and the strategic depth to emerge as global leader in automotive value chains as well. So, another important sector is textiles. In textiles particularly, India is emerging as a global leader. Although the Trump's tariff will have tremendous impact, we are going to see what sort of impact it will have, but textile has emerged as a strong backbone when it comes to Indian manufacturing. As per Economic Survey 24-25, India's textile and apparel industry is among the largest industry globally, very true, contributing around 2.3% to GDP, 13% to industrial production and 12% to total exports. So, remember these data points. Effectively, you can utilize such data facts in your answers in GS3. India's manufacturing sector is poised to reach $350 billion by 2030, creating an estimated 3.5 crore jobs and solidifying its position in the global markets. As the second largest employment generator after agriculture, it directly employs over 45 million people, including significant participation from women and rural populations. Notably, 80% of the manufacturing capacity lies within MSME clusters. So, textiles in particular is dominated by MSMEs. So, that's why it creates a lot of jobs. To further accelerate this momentum, the government has launched PM Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel PM Mitra Parks particularly initiative in recent times with 4,000 plus crore worth of allotment until 27-28. These 7 parks aim to attract 70,000 crore in investments. It will create 20 lakh jobs. One such park inaugurated recently in Dhar, Madhya Pradesh, spans almost 1300 acres, hosts over 80 industrial units, expected to generate almost 3 lakh new jobs. You can clearly see the 7 PM Mitra parks in operation, and some of these projects are greenfield, some of these are brownfield. So, important to remember these projects from the perspective of prelims. Remember that. Investment flows and global confidence. Obviously, the FDI, FDI, when it comes to FDI picture in India, it is little bit mixed now. But between 2014 and 2025, India received total of $748.78 billion worth of FDI, making a 143% increase from the previous decade. So this is a decadal sort of data, not recent trends. In FY 24-25, gross FDI inflows rose 14% year on year to reach almost $81 billion, with the manufacturing sector alone receiving 19 billion, or rather a robust 18% growth over the previous year. Maharashtra led with 39% of the equity inflows, followed by say Karnataka, Delhi. Singapore emerged as the top source of FDI, 30%, ahead of Mauritius, US with 11%, and with a target of $100 billion in annual FDI. India's investment trajectory reflect global confidence in its economic potential and business environment. So the decadal data in that regard is interesting and it is very impressive. Obviously the equity flows or FDI flows is dominated by Maharashtra, with almost 39% of the total investment in FDI going to that particular state. So employment, skills and human capital, that is the core of manufacturing, as I earlier said. Over the past decade, 17 crore jobs have been created, aligning with India's Viksit Bharat vision. So, female workforce participation rate has increased to 32%, and labor force participation rate for women has climbed to almost 34% due to these efforts. Overall unemployment rate has eased as well in recent times. The Union Budget 25-26 has strengthened the manufacturing sector by prioritizing skill development. There is Skill India program which is in operation now. It integrates PM Kaushal Vikas Yojana 4.0, National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme and Jan Shikshan Sansthan into a single industry focused framework, helping the dynamic needs to modern factories and expanding employment opportunity across the country. So, these are some of the flagship skill development initiatives. There is obviously Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, Jan Shikshan Sansthan, and then there is National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme. These are all launched recently as well. So, what are some of the policy catalysts which has powered this particular surge? Obviously, first and foremost, there is GST 2.0. So, in recent times, we have seen the transformative reforms. That is, one major reason for, the manufacturing to grow in recent times. There is National Manufacturing Mission, the strategic compass. It is announced in Union Budget 25-26 as the crown jewel of India's industrial policy. It is a long-term strategic roadmap that integrates policy, execution and governance into a single unified vision. So, 5 areas of National Manufacturing Mission. What are these 5 areas? Ease of and cost of doing business, future ready workforce for in-demand jobs, quality products, availability of technology, vibrant and dynamic MSME sector. So, overall, National Manufacturing Mission is an anchor around which the manufacturing is revolving. Then there is transformative PLI scheme with scale, speed and jobs unmatched. So, some of the key achievements of PLI scheme: investments realized, you can see, sales and jobs created, almost direct and indirectly 12 lakh jobs have been created in recent times after its implementation. Then there is National Logistics Policy launched in September 2022. The National Logistics Policy aims to reduce logistics costs and boost efficiency. Aligned with PM Gati Shakti plan, it targets placing India among the top 25 in the World Bank's Logistics Performance Index by 2030. So, World Bank releases Logistics Performance Index. Remember this particular fact here, important from the perspective of prelims. To achieve this, the Comprehensive Logistics Action Plan focuses on digital systems, standardization, skill development, etc. Another important scheme highlighted is Startup India. Launched on January 16, 2016, the Startup India initiative has significantly boosted India's entrepreneurial landscape, creating third largest startup ecosystem globally with 1.91 lakh DPIIT recognized startups as of September 2025. So, you can clearly see the boost to the Indian entrepreneurship that this particular scheme has given. These startups have generated over 17.69 lakh direct jobs. Obviously, it has seen the tremendous success. Industrialization and urbanization. The National Industrial Corridor Development Program is a major infrastructure initiative aimed at building smart industrial cities with integrated multimodal connectivity to boost manufacturing and urbanization, with 12 new project proposals approved last year involving 28,602 crore in investments. So this is, sort of transformation. So these are very important schemes. So remember some of these schemes around which this manufacturing transformation has revolved. So in conclusion, we can say, as India advances towards $35 trillion vision by 2047, manufacturing will be the engine of growth. That is very true. The government's vision of raising manufacturing share in GDP, backed by transformating policies like PLI or National Manufacturing Mission and skill development initiatives, provide a clear roadmap for industrial resurgence. With global supply chains undergoing a strategic realignment, India has a unique window of opportunity to stay forward as the preferred destination for investment, innovation, and large-scale production. If this momentum is sustained, India can transform from being the factory of the world to becoming the innovation and leadership hub of the world. That's where we want to go by, say, Developed India Vision or Amrit Gal by 2047. So this is very important practice question for you. That's it from my side, and stay tuned for the another edition of Daily News Analysis. Thank you.